Hey guys, today's show is going to be on heat tolerance. We're not just talking around sitting at home with the fan on or an air conditioning unit. We're talking heat tolerance to those of us around the world, and you know who you are, that have to exert themselves in hot, hot climates, and you have no choice, often carrying weight, whether you be an athlete, military personnel, or the like. So, we're going to get to it really fast. We're not going to cover the basics. This is not a show about hydration and electrolytes and blah, 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 blah. This is for the more advanced individual. And let's start off with a couple of different items. First, we'll look at for heat tolerance. And there's going to be a surprise at the end, something you'll be blown away that helps you with heat tolerance, which I would never have guessed either. All right. One is something called AICAR. AICAR, otherwise known as, ready for this, 5-amino-benzoidazole, 4-carbomonoxide, 1-beta-D-ribofuranoxide, otherwise known as AICAR for short. So what they discovered was this. This is a drug which you cannot use if you're a competitive athlete, but there's an alternative. What they discovered with this was AICAR, where they took heat-sensitive mice and gave them this drug, AICAR. It was 100% effective in preventing heat-induced deaths, even when it was given at no more than 10 minutes before the activity. So right before the event, boom, it was able to protect them from high heat damage. Remember, AICAR, though, is not for athletes because it's banned in most of the Olympic-type requirements and so on and so forth. However, something that works similar to AICAR, and this was basically, came out of one of the studies from Baylor, well, actually AICAR first was discovered for heat tolerance from Baylor College of Medicine. Resveratrol. In a study called Resveratrol stimulates AMP kinase activity neurons, they discovered that resveratrol resulted in a robust increase in AMPK threshold phosphorylation, can't speak today, within 2 hours that persisted up to 72 hours. So interestingly enough, resveratrol activated AMPK to an extent similar to that of AICAR. Sounds a little technical, but what they came to the hypothesis was this. AICAR only required 10 milligrams. Resveratrol to develop the equivalent, or at least on the border of being similar to AICAR, with resveratrol required 400 milligrams. So when it comes to heat tolerance, resveratrol, yes, the same thing found in red wine and grapes and so on and so forth and other sources, can and does seem to help with heat tolerance, especially in areas where there's physical exertion. Another one, which I was actually turned on to by the Moroccan cycling team, was glycerol. Now, which was well known. But another study that combined glycerol and creatine, otherwise known as hyperhydration agents. In a study called The Effects of Creatine and Glycerol Hyperhydration on Running Economy in Well-Trained Endurance Runners. What they basically discovered this, it increased their endurance dramatically. A hyperhydration strategy combines creatine and glycerol supplementation for 7 days, increased BM and TW, consequently reduced cardiovascular and thermal strain, but did not significantly affect the oxygen costs of running at 60% of VO2 max. And it did not negatively impact what's called runner efficiency, or otherwise known as RE. But it definitely increased the performance in high temperature. It did not seem to have an effect on the core body temperature in that particular study. What they also discovered those too. Oh, by the way, it was 1 gram per kilogram for average about 2 liters of water. They gave 1 gram of glycerol per kilogram of body weight. And when I'm talking glycerol, got to make sure it's vegetable glycerol. Synthetic glycerol seems to have an opposing effect. Got to have the vegetable glycerol. Anybody in skincare and cosmetics knows that synthetic glycerol, opposite of vegetable glycerol. In another study, they took 11 subjects to moderate to high endurance fitness, and an hour later the subject cycled at what's called 74%, maximum to cannot maintain the cycling cadence above 60 RPMs. No fluid was ingested during the exercise. Glycerol intake increased pre-exercise body water by 730 milliliters and urine volume by 670 milliliters. During the glycerol trial, subjects exercised significantly longer. Ready for this? They exercised 94 minutes compared to the non-glycerol group at 73 minutes. Remember, this is not about exercise performance. This is about performing under high heat. So glycerol and creatine combination seems to be quite alluring. That's a good way of putting it. and it seemed to have no real differences in core body temperature, even though they exerted themselves more. There's a lot of conflicting studies on glycerol. What they're going back and looking at is that often a lot of these studies allowed cold fluids to be drunk in addition to the glycerol during the trials. So they need to do a real clear study on the glycerol, but glycerol is something I do myself and I like it. Next one, very intriguing for developing heat tolerance. Colostrum. In an article that came out of Queen Mary University of London, is dairy colostrum the key to Olympic success? Do you realize when you run, your intestinal temperature goes up, and that causes toxins to leak into the bloodstream, causing shock? Well, what they discovered was this. The American Journal of Physiology, Gastrointestinal and Liver Physiology, they said this could have positive implications not just for athletes but also sufferers of heat stroke. A research group led by Ray Playford, professor of medicine at Bart's London School of Medicine, Dentistry, they took basically athletes and they were asked to run 20 minutes at 80% of the aerobic maximum at the end of the exercise. The main reason being is because when you exercise, you get leaky gut syndrome. In their words, gut leakiness had increased 250% and temperature had risen 2 degrees in the gut. But however, the group that was drinking dairy colostrum for 2 weeks prior to the trial, keep this in mind. If you know you're going to be experiencing high heat and you're going into the desert, something you want to do ahead of time with colostrum, the rise in gut leakiness was reduced by about 80%, despite the same effort and temperature rise. In their words, gut disorders by exercise are common in runners. The body's temperature to increase permeability is to clear the gut contents, given the rise of symptoms such as diarrhea, to avoid toxins from gut organisms entering the bloodstream, as these lead to heat stroke will result in damage to the internal organs. It says basically they said this: gut cells were also cultured, they did it in vitro too, at normal 37 degrees body heat and at 39 degrees to replicate the temperatures after exercise. The death rate of gut cells was much increased at the higher temperature, yet when colostrum was added to the culture medium, the rise in cell death was reduced by 2/3. Colostrum. Remember, that's the same stuff that's given the first milking, the stuff of life. It says, our findings suggest colostrum may have real value in helping our athletes perform. This is a research area especially interested in given our proximity to the Olympics. This is before the 2012. In addition, extremes of temperature and exercise are often suffered by armed forces in desert scenarios that result in heat stroke, which is life-threatening. Based on our results to date, our research is also exploring products may be used for protecting soldiers in life-threatening situations such as these from colostrum. All right, back up to glycerol. Even though it's a food substance, banned by the IOC because it increases blood plasma levels. So before I forget about that, colostrum, okay. Glycerol, no. All right, just keep that also in mind too. Then we go basically to your other aspects. So we have AICAR, or Resveratrol, I should say, not AICAR itself, that's the drug. Resveratrol, Glycerol, Creatine, and Colostrum. But then we look at electrolytes. When you get electrolytes, you have to get a rounded electrolytes. Not something that's basically sodium chloride mixed in. You have to get some of the trace elements and everything else like that. When you get a rounded electrolyte, all the trace minerals in there in small amounts. Let's say, for example, we take a rounded electrolyte product called Elite. They published peer-reviewed clinical study. Those who drank plain water had to drink 74% more water to achieve the same level of hydration as those who drank water with a well-rounded electrolyte. In this case, Elite. So you've got to get the best electrolyte you can. Don't do this cheap commercial stuff. I mean, it has some benefit, but if you're going to be in high heat and your life depends on it or the life of others, get a well-rounded electrolyte. Come on, for the same price as a thing of French fries, you can get a good electrolyte. Big deal. Do it. Your life depends on it. Then more hypothetical after electrolytes. Pine bark. The reason I put pine bark in there as a hypothetical is because pine bark seems to help with skin moisture retention. Otherwise, sometimes in the trade name known as pycnogenol. To give you an idea. And this is also for cosmetic use. Pycnogenol enhanced pine bark skin elasticity by 25% in addition to skin hydration by 8%. Now keep this in mind. It was especially noticeable in women who had dry skin from the start, with a 21% increase in those which had dehydrated or dry skin. So pine bark may have above the horizon a use when it comes to hyperhydration or hydration and high heat. After that, branched chain amino acids. Why branched chain amino acids? You've got to get free-form branched chain. You have to take it in a water bottle and do it prior. Why BCAAs? Because initially when you're exposed to high heat, your nitrogen levels just begin to just go crazy. You start losing protein. World Health Organization a long time ago had a study when you're in high heat, you require 30% more protein. When you're in high heat, you will be breaking down protein fast. Get branched chain amino acids in a free form, not bound to hydrochloride. You'll see leucine, isoleucine, and valine. You won't see leucine hydrochloride, isoleucine hydrochloride, valine hydrochloride. Get free form, add it to your water, drink as much as you can, as long as you're exposed to that heat, and you have to endure a great amount of physical hardship. After that, 2, one thing that may also be along the horizon is prickly pear or nopal. Why? Because these have high levels of heat shock proteins, so it may actually help you endure higher heat. Studies have to be done. Don't know. That's something to keep in your mind until those studies do come out there, or something we may want to experiment with. Prickly pear and nopal. And then the last one, which I'd really like to see some human studies, not out yet, has to do with something called hydrogen sulfide. All right, this is what hydrogen sulfide did. And this is when it comes to worms. So no human trials yet, but what the heck? If you're out there and your performance depends on it, give it a shot. I'll tell you what hydrogen sulfide is found in a second. The researchers found the surprise in nematodes, worms. They were raised in a carefully controlled atmosphere with low concentration of hydrogen sulfide, did not hibernate. Obviously, they hibernate. Instead, their metabolism and reproductive activity remained normal, and their lifespan increased, and they became more tolerant to heat than untreated worms. The hydrogen sulfide exposed worms lived 8 times longer than untreated worms when moved from normal room air to a high temperature environment. It says Roth and colleagues replicated these results in 15 independent experiments. So basically, hydrogen sulfide helps you endure high heat, dramatically reducing their core body temperature, respiration, and need for oxygen. This was done by the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And guess where you get hydrogen sulfide? Well, if I have the article here, I'll tell you. But garlic. Garlic has been known, or has been shown, to dramatically increase hydrogen sulfide levels in the body. So garlic may be on the horizon, this next star, in helping you develop heat tolerance, or I should say enduring high heat when you've got to push yourself to limits. All right, it's Ralph Turchiano. This is one of the health research reports. It's an addendum. And I will be doing more on heat tolerance as we head towards summertime. But for now, if you guys have to be out there, now's the time to start planning, if you're not already out there already. All right, I'll catch you guys in a bit. Thank you.